source of the looking is the same. The source of the looking, the energy that gives the power to see is the same. But there is not yet the learning that causes interpretation. So there is a kind of pure seeing. Now, even when knowledge develops, and so within the objects of sight, labels are offered to them, it is still possible to remain in your original innocence of seeing. It will happen by itself. The mind is trying to make an effort to do something with this seeing. But the very effort that the mind makes clutters up the seeing and makes it very heady. You see? So the mind here is operating under the notion I. What I do, I would like to, all this intention, this I is itself operating as mind. So even this I is also appearing in you. The sense, the sensation of I is also inside the real seeing. I'm not just talking about the physical seeing. I'm talking about the intuitive seeing also registers I as a phenomenon. You see? So this idea about trying to see something usually comes from the mind, whereas real seeing does not come from the mind, it comes from emptiness. The seeing that comes with intention comes from the mind, but there's a seeing which springs from emptiness, you see, and it is empty, itself is empty, and when it looks, all the objects that appear in it is also empty. You see, so well, this the beauty of this is that the beauty about this is that when this recognition occurs, your intellectual faculties are still working. That's fine. You can still say a book is a book. I'm on page 27. You can still, gauge and judge and see things. But all of this new way of seeing is included in a greater seeing, which is emptiness in its source. You see, so the relative is appearing in the absolute. Now, you cannot just try and use your head to understand that, because what I'm pointing to is only going to be confirmed through recognition. It's already taking place. We are not constructing here. You don't need any imagination for this. Simply let the listening happen, because that's what it's doing. You're not doing the listening. The listening is also happening. The understanding is also taking place spontaneously. I call it the understanding is taking place by grace. Who understands, or how do you understand? You don't know how you understand, and you don't need to know how you understand. You see? So like this, when you're seeing now, if you put an intention in the seeing, like I want to see this book as oneness, then you are really creating a kind of strain in the seeing. The fact of the matter is, who is the seer? What is doing the seeing? Let the attention discover that. What is doing the seeing? The mind is going to rush forward. It's going to put its hand up and says, yes, miss, can I tell you who is doing the seeing? But you must reject all the answers from the mind, because they're all conceptual. Let the question happen deeply inside your beingness, and you'll see that the ultimate seer, what is seeing all these things, itself cannot be seen phenomenally. There's only a very subtle intuitive recognition, but it's not objective. It's the most subtle. But when that happens inside you, the magic, the perfume of this magic fills your being. It is a recognition that cannot be scientifically qualified. It is an inner thing, a subtle thing. You are again in your natural and original innocence. But don't get lost in these words. Let them just bathe you. Don't try and make use of them. because this is always coming from the mind. The mind wants to, yes, to put it into place and say, oh yes, now I understand, this is this. But really, the understanding is also a mystery. It is simply happening. The insight is also a mystery. It is also happening. This beautiful unfolding, when it is freed up from the personal interpreter, which is the mind itself, the ego mind, when this seeing is freed from this, then your questions will cease by themselves, because you are home. And when you're home, you don't need to ask questions about anything. Questions are when you have lost your way from home and you ask, how can I get home? But when you're home, you don't have to ask any questions. All your questions will come into quietude, you see.